The Golden Days of Kiev. The story begins on a beautiful, misty morning in February 2022. Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, was still wrapped in its calm and snow-white beauty. Ice had begun to form on the banks of the Dnipro River, and from the city's cafes wafted the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and crescent bread. The city was not just buildings of brick and mortar. It was a witness to the dreams and history of millions. In a small apartment in this city lived Aman. Aman was a visionary architect. His desk was always covered with large maps, blueprints, and pencil sketches. He dreamed of building a Kiev where modernity and ancient heritage would blend seamlessly. On the other hand, Elena was a nurse. The white corridors of Kiev's Central Hospital were her familiar world. Her life was a constant struggle to heal people's wounds and bring smiles to the faces of the sick. Aman and Elena had met in a library. Aman was looking for a rare book on ancient Kiev architecture, and Elena was searching for a new journal on human anatomy. The spark that ignited in their hearts while sitting at the same table, sipping coffee and sharing small talk, was incredibly pure. Their love was not a dramatic movie. It was as warm as the morning sun sitting by the window. The home of love and future plans. A few months before the war, they had decided that they would soon build a home together. Aman would often say, "Elena, I will design a house for us, where the afternoon sun will shine directly onto your hair through the window panes." Elena would reply with a smile, "I don't need a grand house, Aman. Just being by your side and having a quiet place to sleep is enough." On their days off, they would go to the Kiev Opera House, walk in the parks, and think about their unborn children. But ironically, a terrible dark shadow was coming to snatch away even that right to sleep in peace. By mid-February, the weather in the city began to change. Not just the weather, but the language in people's eyes was changing too. Rumors of war were spreading everywhere, but Aman and Elena could not believe that in this modern civilization, someone would actually target a city with bombs. They thought these were just political games. Aman was busy with the drawings of his new project, and Elena was busy preparing for the hospital's upcoming emergency services. February 24th, the dawn that took everything. It was 4:20 a.m. The sky of Kiev was still dark. Suddenly, a massive roar shook the entire city. That sound was not thunder. It was the explosion of a cruise missile. Aman was thrown from his bed. Glass from the windows shattered and fell to the floor. Somewhere in the distance, flames were turning the dark sky red. Sirens began to wail, a long, mournful sound, informing the people of Kiev that the last moment of their safe life had passed. Aman picked up the phone with trembling hands to call Elena. On the other side of the line, the sound of Elena's screams and people crying could be heard. Elena was preparing for her shift at the hospital. "Aman, they have attacked. There's smoke in front of the hospital." Hearing Elena's voice, Aman's heart felt like it would burst. He shouted, "Elena, go to the corner of the room. Don't go near the windows." "I am coming to you." But Aman did not know that on that morning, the streets of Kiev would become a battlefield. The transformation and the beginning of bravery. Within a few hours, Kiev turned into a ghost town. People were trying to flee the city in groups toward the west. There was no room to stand at the train stations. Mothers were running toward bunkers with their infants. Aman received a call from his family. telling him to leave the city. But Aman looked out his window and saw a little girl trapped under the rubble of a collapsed building. At that moment, Aman realized that fleeing was not the solution. He put away his architect's pencils and scales and picked up a shovel and a helmet. He joined the Civil Defense Force. His engineering knowledge had taught him how to pull people out from under collapsed roofs. Meanwhile, Elena did not leave the hospital corridors. She realized that the horrors of war were not just scenes on TV. It was a cruel reality of blood, flesh, and agony. Elena understood that now there was a greater need for bandages and medicine than for tears. Their paths diverged, but their purpose was one: to survive and to save others. Persistence of love amidst darkness. In the first weeks of the war, communication between Aman and Elena almost ceased. There was no electricity, no internet. Occasionally, when a phone signal came through, Aman would message, "I love you, stay safe." This one line was more valuable to Elena than billions of dollars. When Aman cleared rubble, he would occasionally find lost mementos, someone's wedding ring, someone's favorite book. Seeing these, he wondered, if death were to consume him, would Elena know that Aman remembered her until his last breath? It was from this thought that one day, while passing a devastated metal factory, Aman found an abandoned iron rod. He put it in his pocket. At night, while everyone in the bunker tried to sleep, Aman would start grinding that hard iron. He thought that a gold ring might be lost in this war, but a ring forged from this hot iron would be a symbol of their suffering and invincible love. As the first part ends, bombs are raining from the sky, but an immortal bond of love is being forged in Aman's hands. The horrors of war and the new reality. By the beginning of March, the face of Kiev had completely changed. The city that once glittered with architectural beauty was now filled only with the smell of burning and signs of destruction. Aman was no longer an architect. He was now a full-fledged rescue worker. His days were spent moving large concrete slabs in search of pulses of human life. One day, after a residential building in the Irpin area was bombed, Aman reached there with his team. There, he saw a little boy sitting on the rubble with his toy car, his mother lying lifeless beside him. This scene created a deep wound in Aman's heart. He wondered, where has civilization come to, where gunpowder is worth more than human life? Meanwhile, Elena was facing another kind of war within the four walls of the hospital. Shortages of medicine, lack of oxygen, and the pressure of nonstop work were breaking her body. The hospital basement was filled with rows of wounded soldiers. When Elena changed their bandages, many young soldiers would grip her hand in agony. They wanted to know, will I ever be able to go back to my home? Elena had no answer. She would only stroke their heads. Her own inner terror was sky high, but externally, she had to remain ice cold and calm. The blue agony of separation. The distance between Aman and Elena was only a few miles, but because of the war, those few miles felt like light years. Occasionally, when Aman sat in the bunker, exhausted and covered in dust, he would look at the piece of iron in his pocket. He had ground it almost into the shape of a ring. The skin on his fingers had peeled off, but he didn't stop. This ring was a strange inspiration for him to survive. He thought that just as this iron was hardening in adversity, their love was being purified in the fire of difficult times. One night, there was a massive explosion very close to the hospital. Aman was at the other end of the city. Hearing the sound of the explosion, his heart trembled. He knew Elena's hospital was in that direction. He tried calling all night, but there was no network. That night was the longest night of Aman's life. He was wandering around like a madman. The next morning, when he learned through a colleague that the hospital had somehow survived, he fell to his knees on the ground. He realized how deeply they were bound by the threads of their hearts, even if they were physically apart. The extreme test of humanity. Aman witnessed how people help each other even in the midst of war. One day, during rescue work, he saw an old woman giving her only piece of bread to a hungry soldier. Elena, too, saw a wounded soldier asking to give his allotted medicine to another critically injured child. These small incidents taught them that war can destroy cities, but not human conscience. Elena wrote in her diary, "We may be getting lost today, but our humanity will survive." Elena's parents had moved to the Polish border and were repeatedly asking her to leave. But Elena knew what would happen to these injured people if she left. Meanwhile, Aman's parents were also pressuring him to go to a safe place, but Aman and Elena were both bound by an unwritten contract. They knew that their need for the people of this country and this city was greatest now. Their love was no longer just personal. It had become a symbol of collective courage. Completion of the ring and final desire. Finally, Aman finished making that iron ring. It didn't look like a royal piece of jewelry. It was a bit rough and gray. But to Aman, it was the most precious gem in the world. He didn't know when he would be able to put it on Elena. In mid-April, Russian troops began to retreat slightly from Kiev. The city took a small sigh of relief. It was then that Aman decided he would reach Elena at any cost. He understood that life is extremely uncertain. The person who is alive today can become history tomorrow. Therefore, delaying the expression of love is like committing suicide. At the end of the second part, Aman is seen heading towards the hospital on his bicycle, trampling through the ruins of war, with that iron ring in his pocket. The moment of reunion. As the bicycle wheels crunched over broken glass and fragments of brick, Aman's heart was beating faster than the roar of the cannons. The streets of Kiev, which were once bustling with street food vendors and tourists, were now filled only with abandoned military vehicles and sandbags. When Aman reached the main gate of the hospital, he saw a large hole on one side of the wall, likely a rocket strike. The air inside the hospital was heavy, filled with the scent of antiseptics and sighs. Elena was running down the hospital corridor with a stretcher. Seeing Aman in his dust-covered clothes and messy hair, she stopped dead in her tracks for a moment. The files in her hand fell to the floor. Seeing each other in person after several months, it felt like they were two travelers from another planet. Without a word, they embraced each other. That hug was a silent protest against the war. Aman whispered into Elena's ear, "Didn't I tell you I would come?" Elena just sobbed, resting her head on Aman's chest. Those tears weren't of fear. They were of the relief of months of accumulated anxiety being released. He took Elena's hand and sat on an old medicine crate. He pulled out that gray iron ring from his pocket. Aman had bloodied his palms grinding that iron, but the ring was now shining like a mirror. Aman said, "Elena, as an architect, I have designed many grand buildings, but the most beautiful design of my life is you. I don't know if this roof will collapse on us tomorrow. I don't know if we will even have a piece of bread in the days to come. But I know that if I die today, I want to die as your husband. I made this ring from the iron of ruins because our love has found new life from the debris of this war. Will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes and a smile on her lips, Elena simply said, "I am alive only to be yours." An old soldier handed over a packet of biscuits he had and said, "This is your wedding gift." The horror of death retreated for a moment. Everyone felt that bombs could kill the human body, but not human dreams. Elena wanted their wedding to be in a church, even though most of the city's churches were damaged. They decided that the next morning they would stand in the courtyard of a small church and hold each other's hands. Elena washed her blood-stained nurse uniform clean. She had no wedding jewelry, but the iron ring given by Aman surpassed all the diamonds and jewels in the world for her.